The Ritual of the Alpha's Claim. A Werewolf Shifter Romance Audiobook. Written by Clara. Chapter 1. The weight of the ceremonial whip felt like a brand cold leather wrapped around my knuckles. It was an antique, blood-oiled, polished obsidian handle, a grim contract. Alpha Darian, the Grand Elder, Theron, droned his voice, a gravelly rasp, sliced through the tense air of the Obsidian Citadel's council hall. In that moment, I stood straighter, letting the crushing pressure of the room settle over me. My internal roar was locked down tight. The Shadowpeak merger must be secured by the new moon. Theron's eyes, the color of spoiled milk, fixed on me and the mate, Eira, must be humbled. Her pack's spirit is stubborn. Yours must be absolute. Truth be told, the elders didn't care about the merger. They cared about control. They knew the story, the Alpha King who must be ruthless to rule. I am aware of my duties, Elder. My voice was a low, controlled current. Theron chuckled, a dry, hacking sound. Awareness is insufficient. Alpha, we require demonstration, public, absolute, unforgettable demonstration. Her refusal to submit is an insult. To make things worse, the brutality was necessary. 10,000 lives depended on stability. Not only that, but I knew Eira's strength. Breaking her wouldn't be easy. What kind of alpha uses cruelty as a political move? The question, raw and honest, snagged in my mind. Because of that, I focused on the sheer number of my pack members. That's why public cruelty was necessary. She is a warrior, I stated. Warriors understand costs. The right will proceed tomorrow at dusk. It will be decisive. Theron then produced a small, silver locket. Her old pack claims this belonged to her mother. It is a charm. Apparently we wish it to be broken before the rite of final severing. I took the locket. It was warm in my palm. It was oddly heavy. Why destroy it before the ritual? This simple act of destruction felt unnecessarily cruel. It will be handled, I assured him, slipping the locket into my tunic pocket instead of tossing it to my guards. Despite that show of compliance, the Elder's final words were sharp. The Citadel must not harbor disobedience. Darian, break her spirit, or the rite will break you. I left the hall, the weight of the silver locket and the ancient whip pressing against my chest. The transition from political theater to personal confrontation was instantaneous, and it carried the heavy scent of stone and coming blood. Chapter 2. The stone steps leading down to the holding cells were cold, perpetually damp, and smelled of iron. Moments later, I stood before Eira's cell. She wasn't pacing, she wasn't weeping. She sat upright, studying the intricate carvings on the lock. Her profile was sharp, her jaw set like granite. You should rest, I stated, my voice echoing a little too loudly. She turned slowly, her eyes, a striking, cold shade of gray, met mine. There was no fear, only pure, undiluted hatred. It hit me like a physical blow. The victor speaks, she said, her voice husky, yet carrying an edge sharper than any blade. Truth be told, her calmness infuriated me. I came to inform you of the rite tonight at dusk. I know what your people do, Alpha Darian. Eira replied. You intend to make me an example, a cautionary tale. Instead of denying it, I simply acknowledged the truth. Your pack fought well, Eira, but they lost, and your defiance is a complication I cannot afford. I leaned against the bars. Why not plead, or curse? Submission would be easier. With every heartbeat, I waited for the fissure. She smiled, a thin, feral thing. And give your elders the pleasure of seeing me grovel? Never. You seek to break my will because you fear the idea of a queen who hasn't been tamed. You want a doll. You got a wolf. What kind of leader fears the strength of his mate? The word mate made the air thicken. Her hatred felt powerful, real. I changed the subject. Your pack leader mentioned a charm your mother's. They want it destroyed. I pulled out the silver pendant, engraved with a single, complex symbol, a spiral woven into a rising moon. Eira's composure finally shattered. Her eyes widened. A flash of pure, terrified desperation. She lunged for the bars. A growl rose in her throat, raw and animalistic. No. You will not touch it. It is not just jewelry, it's a word. It protects my legacy. Her reaction was too intense for just a memento. As the truth unraveled, I realized the Elder Council's demand wasn't just symbolic, it was tactical. What is the legacy she speaks of? What warding power does a simple locket hold? This was a key. Open loop. I tucked the charm away. It is too late for superstition. Eira, save your strength. I turned to leave. "Darian," she whispered, my name leaving her lips for the first time without venom as if pulled by a string. "I paused. You may take my body, but the spirit you claim to break you will only claim because it mirrors your own." Her words stung. Not only that, but her raw power, even in despair, intrigued me beyond reason. With a single glance, I left. She is a dangerous wildfire. I needed to go inspect the chamber. From there, I would face the Rite of Claiming and initiate the irrevocable change to both our lives. Chapter 3. The Chamber of Discipline was cavernous, lit by sputtering oil lamps. It smelled of centuries of tradition, dried herbs, dust, and blood. My lieutenant, Sinric, was supervising the final preparations. The elders added extra chains. "Alpha, remove the extra chains," I ordered instantly. My voice trembled slightly. Why risk defiance for a captured enemy? What would the pack think if their Alpha needed 3 times the restraint to handle one woman? Sinric nodded. I walked the perimeter. The rite was about pain, but also the spiritual transfer of fealty, marked by the scars. He forced the claim because he believed the only way to neutralize dark power was to bind it to the Alpha line. I had to ensure my strikes silenced any dissent. I needed to uphold the tradition, because to fail would give Theron the pretext to seize power. At the same time, the new, dangerous internal plot twist, Eira's legacy, was demanding attention. What if the locket was a suppressor? I pulled out the silver locket. It pulsed faintly. The Elder had wanted it broken to sever her past ties. I had it intact. I looked at Sinric. "Give me a moment, Lieutenant." Sinric turned and left as if the forest watched. I was utterly alone. I closed my hand around the locket, the small, sharp edges digging into my skin. I felt a faint tingle, a rush of cold energy. I am about to flog the woman who is supposed to be my Luna, and I am hiding her forbidden magical trinket. At that moment, I made my commitment. I wouldn't destroy the locket. I would proceed with the rite, but I would keep the charm. This was my true commitment, an act of small, private rebellion against the elders. What will happen when the full power of the rite hits a warded target? Will the bond be stronger? Or will it kill us both? I pocketed the locket again, then walked toward the exit. The transition was now complete. The cold, clinical duty was now laced with personal, forbidden intrigue, leading directly to the moment of irrevocable change. Chapter 4. The air was thick, heavy, like breathing dust and ozone. The hall was silent, save for the rhythmic, ominous drum beat. Eira stood bound. Her back exposed. Her gray eyes were fixed on me, daring me to flinch. She looks like a martyr. I stepped forward, the blood-oiled whip heavy. My human compassion receded. It was the transformation of a king into an executioner. As if fate demanded it, I met her gaze one last time. "Eira of Shadowpeak," I boomed, "by ancient law and right of conquest, your claimed your fealty will be carved into your flesh." Without warning, I raised the whip. The first strike hit her upper back, a clean, brutal line. The sound was a sickening crack. Eira's body arched, but she didn't scream. No matter how hard she tried, she kept her eyes open. What followed was a relentless series of strikes. With each snap, my wolf howled, not in anger, but in a profound, guttural grief. I am damaging what is meant to be mine. The third strike brought blood. The scent hit me, metallic, fresh, and deeply, viscerally mating. As the bond pulsed, a sharp, hot surge of energy slammed into my own spine. In the span of a breath, the rite crossed the threshold. As the 10th stroke landed, Eira screamed. A half-human, half-animal, she hung, unconscious, by the bonds. But then, the scar tissue began to form, a strange, dark lattice pattern where the silver locket, in my pocket, was vibrating wildly. Just like that, everything changed. The psychic link snapped into place, a violently forged chain. I was instantly, sickeningly flooded with Eira's emotions, the hatred, the agony, but also an overwhelming, staggering will to survive and a feral possessiveness that mirrored my own. I dropped the whip. I stared at the dark, intricate scars. I had tried to break her, but the rite, coupled with the hidden magic, had only chained us together. "It is done," I roared, forcing the authority back. "The submission is complete." My immediate goal was simple: escape the scrutiny and hide the dangerous truth of the psychic bond before it destroyed us both. I had created a volatile psychic codependent monster. Because of that, my next move had to be swift. I needed to retreat and silence the unwanted echo of her hatred that now screamed inside my head. Chapter 5. I was in my private study. I couldn't focus. All I could feel was the phantom sting and the acid wash of Eira's hatred. She didn't know what scared her more, the pain of the rite or the realization that a soul had fused to hers. Her terror was a spike in my brain. I threw a crystal decanter of water across the room. Meanwhile, Sinric entered. He saw the mess, but said nothing. Alpha, the elders request immediate confirmation that the spiritual submission was achieved. They want to know if she begged. The rite was successful. I lied, my voice steady. Her submission is absolute. She is dormant, but claimed. Tell the elders she will not be available for viewing until tomorrow. I will oversee her recovery personally. It is the Alpha's right. Sinric nodded as her wolf stirred. I felt a sudden, aggressive surge of defiance from Eira. Because of that, I knew the lie was essential. Sinric, I said, looking out at the shadowed forests. Did you ever feel a connection during a claim, even with the most unwilling mate? Sinric paused in the quiet that followed. He offered a personal story. When I claimed my Luna, Lyra, it was quiet, a deep, heavy silence, the silence of resignation. We found peace in our shared defeat. This is different, I murmured. On the other hand, I had chaos with every heartbeat. I felt Eira's fury, her desire for vengeance. My claim brought not resignation, but a volatile, passionate war in my own mind. Have her moved immediately, I commanded. To my personal wing, the East Chamber. Post the best guards. Tell them she is too unstable and dangerous, requiring the Alpha's direct intervention. Which meant I was admitting she was a threat, but ensuring she was a secret threat I could control. The war was no longer between packs, it was between the Alpha and the woman who now lived inside his head. I was making a commitment to the deception, and now I had to learn how to control the powerful force I had chained myself to. Chapter 6. Next, Eira lay unconscious in my private East Chamber. I stood by the bed, looking at the black, patterned scars. They pulsed faintly with the cold energy from the locket, which was now locked in the wall. She felt it clear as day, even in her unconscious state, a deep-seated pain and an irrational need to break free, and I felt every bit of it. In the echo of his voice, Darian's voice, I heard the accusation, "You failed to break her." I needed to test the bond. One reached out and gently, almost tentatively, touched the raw, scarred skin. Her body moved on instinct, arching off the bed and gasping. The wave of pain that hit me was blinding. It wasn't just physical pain, it was the pain of betrayal and violent ownership. It hurts me to hurt her. This was the plot twist. The ritual hadn't broken her. It had turned her into my most dangerous defense system, because any attack on her was now an attack on me. Before either could speak, the door opened. It was Darian, with two silent elders. "Alpha," Darian said, his voice dripping with false concern, "we must see the mark. The law demands confirmation." They came to look for failure. My heart skipped a beat. I moved immediately, placing my large body between the elders and Eira. I placed my hand firmly on her shoulder, an act that sent a shockwave of possessive energy through the bond. "The submission is confirmed," I stated, projecting sheer, unwavering authority. "The scars are deep. Elder, look." I exposed only the edge of the dark, patterned scar. "They are the mark of the Obsidian lineage. She is mine." Theron's eyes narrowed. "The pattern is deep, unusually so. It is the mark of a warrior's spirit finally brought to heal," I declared. I then took an immense gamble, leaning in close to Eira, putting on a powerful display, "and I find her unique spirit captivating. She will serve as my Luna, and she will breed the strongest heirs. I will brook no dissent." The moment their eyes locked, I sent a silent, powerful pulse of protective, proprietary energy through the bond. Eira, despite her unconscious state, responded perfectly. Her breath caught, and a tiny, almost inaudible growl escaped her lips, sounding like a deeply satisfied, submissive rumble. The elders exchanged a glance. Theron's face stiffened. "Very well, Alpha." Darian. Theron bowed stiffly. "Protect the lineage." As the echo faded, I waited until they were gone. The growl had saved me. I gently ran my finger over the cold, dark scar. "The facade is built, Eira, now we live in it." My new immediate goal was to learn the language of the bond, to turn our shared hatred and pain into a weapon against our common enemy. The elders, the war has begun, and my mate is my only hidden ally. Chapter 7. I sat by the massive fireplace, the crackling logs doing little to warm the icy knot of anxiety in my stomach. The silence of my private chamber, usually a sanctuary, now felt like a pressure cooker. That night, Eira woke up. It wasn't a gentle wake, it was a sharp, hostile rush of consciousness that slammed into the psychic link like a runaway carriage. My head snapped up. I felt a surge of adrenaline, not my own, but hers, raw, furious, and seeking immediate egress. "Don't move," I commanded, my voice low. Eira was already trying to sit up. She froze, her breath hitching in a harsh, ragged pattern. Her gray eyes, now fully alert, found mine. They were not the eyes of a defeated prisoner. They were the eyes of a predator who had found its opening. "You," she spat, her voice raspy, a low snarl woven into the single word. The sound echoed painfully inside my skull. What followed was the first true conversation of our new reality, a vicious, silent battle fought entirely through the bond. Before a word was spoken aloud, she projected pure, searing hatred. I retaliated with heavy, possessive dominance. I need to establish the new rules for her confinement and attempt to exert mental control. "The rite is done, Eira," I said, rising and walking toward the bed. "The claim is marked. You are bound to me. You will not leave this room without my direct command." "Bound?" She laughed, a short, broken sound of pure derision, as if the world narrowed to just the two of us. She pushed herself up fully, ignoring the pain that flashed across the link. "You didn't bind me. Alpha Darian, you caged a creature that now shares your mind. Don't you feel it? I am the weakness you willingly took on because your political position demanded it." She felt it, clear as day, the desperate calculation behind my actions. She was right. The bond worked both ways, like an electrified leash. Not only that, but her defiance was strangely exhilarating. "Your hatred is noted," I countered, standing over her, "but let me explain the physics of our situation. If you move to betray me, to escape, or to undermine my rule, I will punish you, and thanks to the bond, I will feel your pain, but I will endure it. Will you endure the pain of your pack when the elders find out I failed to tame you?" It was a cold, effective threat, leveraging the political consequences she cared about. She flinched this time, the hatred momentarily replaced by cold, crushing despair, a despair that settled like lead in my own chest. At that moment, I understood the true scope of the disaster. Her ferocity was now a shared power source, yes, but her pain was a shared liability. I had to keep her physically safe and emotionally stable just to function. I had to coexist with her hatred. "You're a coward," she whispered, her eyes burning with an intense realization. "You hide behind ritual and tradition because you're terrified of the strength that isn't carved by a whip. You don't want a mate. You want a shield." Despite that scathing truth, I felt a dangerous, powerful surge of possessiveness. Her intelligence was a matching strength, a dark parallel to my own. "She sees me. She truly sees the man beneath the armor." I leaned in, my voice dropping to a gravelly, intimate murmur. "Perhaps, but a shield needs protection. Eira, know this. I will kill anyone who tries to break this bond. One will kill anyone who tries to harm you, including yourself, because your life, your pain, and your survival are now inherently tied to the strength of my crown." I left her with a clear threat. Harm to her will bring me pain, but harm to the crown will bring her pack ruin. The intense awareness of her presence in my mind was overwhelming, and I needed to find a way to wall her off before the pack meeting in the morning. Chapter 8. Come morning, the pack meeting was a disaster before it even began. I stood at the head of the long, granite table, attempting to discuss territory disputes with my betas, but I couldn't concentrate. Eira was awake, pacing my chamber. With every step she took, I felt a sharp, restless energy prickling at the edges of my focus. Find a way to suppress the emotional feedback loop during high-stress situations. This was my current, desperate goal. Meanwhile, Beta Tormund, a dull but loyal warrior, was detailing the logistics of patrolling the newly merged border. The patrols report increased incursions. Alpha, they require more resources. I tried to respond, but suddenly, the air in the room seemed to rush out. I staggered, gripping the edge of the table. A powerful wave of claustrophobia and choking terror slammed into me. Eira's emotions. What is she doing? I focused my mind, pushing back hard against the terror. "Eira, stop it." Her world tilted in response to my mental command, and I got a brief, horrifying image. She was standing by the high, narrow window of my chamber, staring down at the dizzying drop to the citadel walls. She wasn't escaping. She was contemplating suicide. She's trying to punish me. The realization was a cold shock. She was using the bond as a weapon of self-harm. Alpha? Cynric questioned, his face etched with concern. The entire table was staring at me. It was nothing, I managed. My voice strained, a sudden weakness. Focus on the border. I tried to appear utterly controlled, but my heart was slamming against my ribs. What's worse, I knew I couldn't threaten her with her pack's ruin this time. The fear of her pack's safety wasn't strong enough to outweigh her suicidal despair. I pushed a direct, simple command through the bond, stripped of all dominance, relying only on the sheer strength of my alpha presence. Do not lie down, Eira. This is not the answer. The terror slowly receded, replaced by a lingering, heavy sadness that still made my limbs feel weak. The small failure left me utterly vulnerable. Because of that, I abruptly ended the meeting. I dismissed them all, knowing I appeared frail, a fatal weakness between one breath and the next. My entire ruling philosophy, true strength is absolute dominance, crumbled. I had to protect her to protect myself. I rushed back to the chamber. Eira was indeed lying on the bed, her face turned to the wall. She wasn't weeping, but the sadness radiating from her was profound. I sat on the edge of the bed. You attempted to use the bond to incapacitate me, I stated, keeping my tone neutral. I attempted to find freedom, she corrected, her voice brittle. And now you know the truth. Alpha, any physical or emotional pain inflicted on me directly interferes with your ruling capacity. You must protect me to protect yourself. She had analyzed the bond faster than I had. Just like that, everything changed. You are correct, I conceded, a flicker of dark respect emerging. I cannot rule if you are unstable, therefore, our coexistence must be a mutual truce. You will not harm yourself, and I will ensure your physical safety. From there, I realized I had to approach Eira not as a captive, but as a dangerous partner whose well-being was tied to my crown. This was the first small success in changing my approach. The cost of my crown had just become inextricably linked to her defiant heart, and the elders would soon test the fragility of that link. Chapter 9. A week passed in tense, silent coexistence. I spent my nights studying, and my days pretending normalcy. Soon after, the expected confrontation arrived. It was an informal dinner held in the Grand Hall, demanded by Darian under the guise of welcoming the new Luna. It was a clear test of the forged facade. I felt Eira's anxiety spiking through the bond as I led her into the hall. She was dressed in heavy, dark velvet, an alpha's mate, politically, but a prisoner to me. She was tense, her initial goal, never submit internally, fighting against the bond's new rule of not jeopardizing the crown. With his scent in the air, I knew Darian was waiting. He sat at the head of a secondary table, watching us with the cold patience of a snake. Luna, Eira, Darian greeted her, his voice oily. It is good to see you recover so swiftly from the rite. It proves the wisdom of the old ways. The old ways are brutal, elder, Eira replied, her voice steady, low. She did not raise it, but she did not lower it either. Her defiance was subtle, masked by politeness. Darian smiled, his eyes flicking to the dark scars just visible at the nape of her neck. And necessary. We are all relieved to know the daughter of Shadowpeak spirit is now properly yoked to the Obsidian lineage. He paused, looking directly at Eira. Forcing the issue. Show us your fealty. Luna, kneel to the Alpha and offer a true show of submission for the pack to witness. The demand was political dynamite. A public, unprompted act of submission, as if fate demanded it. The bond screamed with Eira's rising fury. I will not. I felt it, clear as day, the desperate internal struggle. If she refused, the elders would declare the rite a failure and challenge my rule. If she submitted, her spirit, the only thing I respected, would fracture. Rather than forcing her, I stepped slightly in front of her. This was the moment I had to choose between my old, flawed self, absolute dominance, and the new, pragmatic reality, mutual protection. Luna kneels to no one but the Alpha, elder, I cut in, my voice carrying the weight of ancient law, not tradition, and I do not require my mate to grovel for your amusement. I took her hand, a public display of ownership, yet a private act of shielding. The rite established her fealty. She is claimed because her scars proclaim it. I pulled her slightly closer, forcing intimacy. Under the weight of his stare, Eira did something unexpected. Instead of fighting the bond, she used it. She leaned into my grasp, projecting a wave of intensely possessive, feral attraction through the link. A sensation so potent it momentarily destabilized my control. She wasn't submitting. She was claiming my claim over her. The action was politically perfect. It looked like a desperate Luna seeking comfort from her powerful alpha. Theron's smug expression faltered, confusion momentarily clouding his eyes. The space between them burned as I stared into Eira's eyes, seeing not hatred, but a fierce, shared purpose. She was willing to play the dutiful Luna if it meant protecting the power that now housed her. The challenge was defused. The tension broke with a strained cough from a nearby beta. This pivotal moment deepened the toxic attraction. Her defiance, though politically dangerous, earned my dark respect. Even so, the elders were now openly suspicious of the nature of the bond. I steered Eira out of the room shortly after, the public victory sour back in the sanctuary of my chamber. I locked the door and finally let my guard down. "You played them," I murmured, my voice rough. "We both did," she replied. Stepping away from me, "I used the lie you gave me, but understand this. Darian, I submitted to our shared survival, not to you, and I now know that your greatest weakness is the pain you tried to inflict on me." Her name hung in the air, charged with both threat and undeniable passion. The stakes were no longer just the crown. They were the unraveling of my own soul. Chapter 10. After that tense, silent victory against Theron, the air in my private chamber was thick with something far more volatile than political stress. It was charged with raw, antagonistic desire. Eira stood a few feet from me, her chest rising and falling quickly under the heavy velvet dress. "You played them perfectly," I repeated, my voice still rough from the effort of control. I walked to the mahogany cabinet, poured a shot of the strongest amber liquor, and downed it in one swallow. It was a weak attempt to quiet the frantic drumming of my wolf's pulse, a rhythm that now included a strange, wild counterbeat from Eira's spirit through the bond. "We are two sides of the same coin now, Darian," Eira replied, her voice low. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the fear beneath her facade of strength. "I need you whole to live. You need me to be stable to rule. It is a mutually toxic arrangement." Instead of moving away, she took a single step closer. Her defiance was a palpable heat. "I used the bond, Alpha. I projected desire, not obedience. Did it feel real? Did my feigned surrender resonate with that primal thing in your chest?" The question was a direct challenge to my deepest control. She was pushing the boundary between political survival and the intense, unwanted passion the bond was generating. She's trying to find the crack in my armor. With his scent in the air, the very atmosphere of the room seemed to contract. My wolf was reacting not to her words, but to the pheromones the bond was amplifying. As the bond pulsed, it wasn't just pain or emotion flowing. It was a potent cocktail of need and aggression, a terrible mixture that made my hands itch to close around her. "The rite was meant to establish my absolute dominance," I growled, taking another slow step toward her. "The bond merely ensures it. Do not mistake a biological response for a genuine connection, Luna." But the lie was hollow. I was acutely aware of her injuries, the places on her back where the skin was drawn tight and black, yet I couldn't stop the hunger that clawed at my insides. This was beyond lust. It was a primal command fueled by the disastrous ritual. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, I felt a sudden, shocking shift in my own wolf form, a strange, deep vibration starting in my spine, right where the psychic link was forged. My canines sharpened painfully, and a new, metallic scent, like ozone mixed with wild, untamed magic, flooded my senses. It wasn't my scent, it was hers. The locket's power, combined with the bond, was starting to influence my wolf. This was the unexpected twist, the merger of their inherent strengths, making me vulnerable to her heritage. Not only that, but the internal sensation was overwhelming, a terrifying loss of my rigid control. Eira saw the change in my eyes, the way the gold in my irises momentarily burned silver. She didn't retreat. Her soul answered the silent, desperate hunger in my wolf. "It is not obedience, Darian," she whispered, her voice husky with challenge. She raised her hands, not to push me away, but to rest her palms against my chest. "It is the truth you fought to deny. The bond made us matchfire, and I know you feel it, this agonizing, Primal need that has nothing to do with politics. The air thickened, becoming heavy and breathless. My control snapped. I grabbed her, pulling her against the hard line of my body, the contact of violent, necessary relief to the agonizing tension. Because of that, the world spun for a moment, and I lost myself completely to the bond's demanding thrum. My mouth found hers, a devastating, fierce collision of necessity and antagonism. It wasn't tender, it was a hungry, possessive affirmation of the bond. Her hands flew up, tangling in my hair, pulling me closer still. This isn't love, it's mutual consumption. It is the cost of my crown, carved into my own flesh. In that moment, as our breath mingled and the primal need soared, a strategic question surfaced through the fog. If her defiance fuels my power, and this passion is born from our shared pain, is this dark bond the only way I can ever truly feel alive? That's why I devoured her desperation, her hidden strength, and her terror. I needed to consume her resistance to feel whole. What followed was a rapid, intense descent into pure sensation, driven by the violent harmony of the psychic link. The furs on the floor felt rough against my knees as I urged her back, my hands tracing the lines of the scars that were my punishment and my prize. With a single glance, I saw the true terror and the genuine desire warring in her eyes. This was the midpoint climax, the point of irrevocable physical intimacy that changed the nature of our battle as fire bloomed beneath her skin and mine. The line between hatred and passion dissolved, setting up the complex, emotionally fraught dynamic for the rest of the act. The intense, dark connection established, I knew my deception wouldn't last much longer. The scent of Eira's raw, powerful magic was now clinging to my own wolf. Chapter 11. I woke before Eira, the memory of the night a confusing mixture of raw violence and undeniable unity. The room was cold, the fire reduced to embers, but my skin burned. I looked at Eira. She was asleep, her breathing shallow, her body curled tightly beneath the furs. The dark scars on her back looked starkly defined in the faint morning light. Still, the sheer power of the psychic connection remained, a low, constant hum of awareness between us. I was an alpha who valued control, but last night I had been utterly subservient to a biological mandate driven by a conquered woman's will. In the stillness that followed, I finally allowed myself to touch the silver locket. Retrieved from the hidden compartment, I held the charm, studying the spiral moon design, the symbol of her legacy. Why was I protecting this object that the elders wanted destroyed? Because my wolf had sensed something in her, a wild, elemental power that matched the ancient Obsidian lineage, perhaps even surpassed it. I needed to know more. I needed a relevant backstory. I rose quietly and moved to the heavy oak desk, pulling out a hidden scroll from the archives, a forbidden text detailing the origins of the Shadowpeak pack. The text spoke of the old blood, a lineage that contained the Luminari gene, a rare, recessive trait that granted the ability to draw the strength of others through a binding. As the truth unraveled, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room temperature. Eira didn't just survive the rite. She used the rite to claim a portion of my own alpha strength. The black, lattice scars weren't just the mark of my ownership. They were the channels for her luminary power. This discovery was the strategic question of the act. Had I unknowingly signed a power-sharing agreement? That's why I realized the elders hadn't just wanted to break her spirit. They wanted to destroy her potential. They knew the threat of the Luminari. I felt a sudden, sharp spike of guilt through the bond. Eira was waking up. Her chest ached, and she turned, her gray eyes meeting mine. "Reading forbidden texts, Alpha?" she mocked, her voice laced with lingering exhaustion and fresh hostility. I closed the text. "I am learning the rules of our confinement, Luna, and I know now that my strength is not all I gave you. You took something else." Eira smiled, that same thin, feral smile that challenged my soul. She felt it, clear as day, that I was both terrified and intrigued by her. "My legacy, Alpha," she confirmed. "My people believe that to survive the greatest trauma, you must take the fire of your attacker. You flogged me. I took your fire now. Any pain inflicted on me is a physical drain on your alpha form, not just a mental distraction." This was a new, frightening level of high-stakes conflict. The elders' attacks on her would literally deplete my power as if summoned. I felt a new level of possessiveness. I couldn't just keep her alive. I had to keep her happy, or at least, mentally content. Then we have a new alliance, I declared, walking back to the bed, a parallel structure of survival. You must stop hating me to protect your pack. I must protect you to protect my crown, and we both must hide the true nature of the bond from the elders. The tension broke with that realization. We were political enemies forced into a terrifyingly intimate partnership from there. Our focus had to shift entirely to external threats, because the elders were closing in. And my self-inflicted vulnerability was a ticking time bomb. Chapter 12. The very next afternoon, the confrontation I had feared arrived. By the time I reached the main Alpha office, the scent of Old Wolf, Darian's personal, musty signature, was heavy in the air. He was sitting in my chair, a brazen power move. Alpha, Darian greeted me, rising slowly. His eyes, though old, were sharp with calculated malice. I see that Luna has stabilized. Good, we can proceed with the next step of the merger. What is the next step? My voice was cold as the bond pulsed. Eira's distant anxiety spiked, sensing danger. The fertility ritual, Darian stated simply. It must be done by the new moon to legitimize the claim and secure the lineage. It is a necessary part of the old ways. This was the core obstacle. Darian wasn't just interested in tradition. He was trying to force a genuine physical and emotional intimacy. He knew our antagonistic bond couldn't easily withstand. He knew the true, stabilizing bond of wolves often begins with the mate's first successful pregnancy. More importantly, he presented me with a physical sign of his control, a small, intricately carved wooden box on my desk. This box contains the Obsidian Catalyst, an ancient fertility draft. You must administer it to Luna tonight. I picked up the box. It was surprisingly heavy. I felt it, clear as day, that Eira was projecting a mixture of revulsion and rising panic. She knew what that draught was. And if I refuse? I asked, meeting his gaze. Darian shrugged, his face impassive. Then the elders will conclude the rite failed to achieve spiritual fealty, and the next step must be taken, the decommissioning of the mate, followed by an immediate succession challenge to the Alpha who failed to complete the ancient law. It was an open threat to my life and crown. This created the highest conflict yet. I was trapped. After that conversation, I realized Darian didn't need to defeat me in battle. He just needed me to choose not to impregnate Eira. He was setting up a parallel structure of choice. Commit to the ritual and risk creating a powerful child bound by a chaotic, volatile bond, or refuse and lose the crown immediately. I dismissed Darian, the threat hanging heavy in the room. I walked straight back to my private chamber, the wooden box clutched in my hand. Eira was sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting. Her eyes were wide, and the fear radiating off her through the bond was crippling. The fertility draft, she whispered, not needing to ask the catalyst. It doesn't just induce fertility, Darian, it amplifies the existing bond during the act. It was designed to solidify an unwanted claim, to force emotional dependency, because the elders feared the mate would kill the alpha if the claim was weak. Without warning, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, a physical reaction to her terror. This pain was not just weakness, it was a warning. Then we are truly cornered, I admitted, my voice strained. I placed the box on the mantel. I must administer it, but I will not do so until I understand the extent of the risk. As the bond pulsed with her fear, I was flooded with an aggressive, protective instinct. My alpha side took over, fueled by a desire to save the creature I had damaged. I took her hands, the contrast between the cold fear in her skin and the hot, dark scars on her back jarring. Listen to me, we have one night. I will find a counteragent, or a loophole, but you will not break. You must use that defiant spirit not for self-harm, but for survival. I looked into her eyes, the gray fire meeting my intense gold. Her heart skipped, the frantic rhythm mirroring my own. Chapter 13. I slammed the heavy book, Chronicles of the Ancient Claims, shut as the silence roared. I felt Eira's terror pulsing through the bond. The Obsidian Catalyst in the wooden box sat on the mantel, a dark, silent threat to both our futures. I need to know everything you know about that draft, I demanded, turning to Eira. Eira was on her feet, pacing the length of the chamber carpet. Her thoughts spun through the bond, a whirlwind of ancient knowledge and raw fear. It's old blood magic. Darian from before the Obsidian lineage was purely wolf. Darian wants emotional dependency, she explained, her voice tight. The catalyst doesn't just make a female fertile, It rips down mental walls if the claim is already volatile. It will fuse our consciousnesses. You'll get perfect obedience, a puppet Luna, but I will lose myself to your raw alpha. The pain will shatter what's left of my luminary core. Because of that, I knew this wasn't just about political stability. It was about Eira's soul, and if her soul fractures, my own mind will be permanently damaged by the feedback. I paced to the desk, flipping through the scroll I had retrieved earlier, the forbidden text on the luminary. Next, I found the relevant passage. The luminary's defense against a binding agent is not shielding, but counter-absorption. Your texts mention a defense, I said, pointing to the aged parchment, a method to absorb and stabilize the bonding agent. It requires a counteragent, the heartwood bloom, a flower that grows only near geothermal vents in the south. Eira stared at the page. The bloom? It's a myth. It neutralizes forced magical bindings. We don't have time to send a search party. The ritual is set for midnight. She didn't know what scared her more, the forced intimacy or the loss of her identity. I felt her spiraling panic, and it made my jaw ache. We need a better plan, Eira. Now we can't let him win. On the other hand, a sudden, terrifying idea hit me, fueled by the aggressive logic of my own wolf. If the luminary absorbs the bond, can you also absorb the alpha's dominance? Can you turn the psychological weapon against the one who wields it? Eira's eyes widened, a flicker of dark, calculating brilliance returning. The air thickened with her focus. The luminary can redirect psychic energy if the catalyst amplifies our existing bond, the hatred, the defiance, the shared pain. I can use that intensity. One could target the weakest link therein. This was the plot twist in the making. Darian is the one who most wants the bond to be flawless. I reasoned aloud. What's worse, he's watching the ritual. If the bond's energy spikes uncontrollably, and he feels a fraction of that chaos, he'll see it as my failure, but he'll be vulnerable. That's why we had to risk a psychic counterattack. It was reckless, volatile, and dependent on a level of trust we didn't yet possess. This established the new, immediate tension for the following scene, the absolute necessity of complete trust. Chapter 14. The clock in the tower chimed 11 times, a deep, resonant sound that signaled the approach of the ritual hour. Despite that looming danger, a strange calm settled over us. We had exhausted all options. We had to rely on the psychic counterattack. I walked to the hidden compartment in the wall. I retrieved Eira's small, silver locket. I felt it, clear as day, a slight, cold hum of magic. This belongs with you, I said, placing the locket into her hand. It was the deepest act of surrender I could offer. I am trusting the magic I was commanded to destroy. Eira looked at the locket, then back at me. Her expression was raw, no hatred, no defiance, just quiet acknowledgement. Between them, something cracked. You swore on your crown to protect the lineage, she whispered, holding the locket tight now. Swear on your true alpha honor. Darian, swear that you won't let the catalyst force me into a life where I don't recognize my own soul. I stepped closer, my face inches from hers. The light from the fireplace cast long, flickering shadows. In that moment, I saw not a political pawn, but a warrior facing the most intimate battlefield. I swear, I answered, my voice a low, gravelly promise. I swear by the blood of my wolf, by the shame of the whip, and by the chaos we now share, I will not let you shatter. I need your defiance. Eira, I need your fire to survive this crown. I will ensure your survival, because I have sacrificed everything else for this moment, and I will not let it be stolen by a senile elder. The confession was brutal and honest. I admitted my need for her strength. This was the vulnerability that bridged the gap. With every heartbeat, the anticipation grew unbearable. We were about to enter a forced intimacy ritual that demanded submission, yet our survival depended on an act of rebellion. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, Eira lunged forward. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a desperate sealing of the pact. Her arms wrapped around my neck, pulling me down with sudden, ferocious strength. The space between them burned with a need that was utterly primal. The kiss was deep, consuming. It wasn't about tenderness. It was about acknowledgement. We were marking each other, affirming the volatile alliance that had been forged in pain and now demanded trust. I need your strength. I take your power. The silent exchange through the bond was agonizingly clear. I tasted the fear on her tongue, the sharp, electric edge of her magic. I felt my wolf, usually locked down, roaring its approval, a mix of possessive anger and dark, exhilarating desire. What followed was a dizzying, hurried scramble into the furs of the bed, a desperate, gasping urgency driven by the chiming of the midnight hour. The short sentences conveyed the frantic pace. No time, only now, only each other. We were not making love. We were preparing for war. Her world tilted as I moved over her, the touch intense and possessive. I felt the sharp ridges of her scars beneath my fingers, and I kissed the unmarred skin around them, an act of reverence for the pain I had inflicted. As if the world narrowed to this chamber and this shared purpose, we consumed each other's fear and promise. The physical act was raw, focused, and utterly necessary, a communion of shared destiny. Even so, the clock ticked on. I pulled away slightly, breathing heavily. The moment was over. The pact was sealed. The climax of vulnerability had set the stage for the true climax of the act, the forced ritual. Chapter 15. The chamber was arranged according to the elder's specifications: stark white linen, scented oils, and the heavy presence of two witnesses. Theron and Cynric stood silently near the fireplace. By the time I led Eira to the center of the room, she looked composed, regal, and terrifyingly pale. She was wearing the locket, hidden beneath her shift, our secret weapon. I held the wooden box. I opened it. Inside was a small, ornate silver vial containing the dark, thick obsidian catalyst. Alpha Darian, administering the draft and solidifying the claim, Theron commanded, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. He was watching for any sign of hesitation, any flicker of weakness. I uncorked the vial. The air immediately changed. The catalyst had a sickly, metallic sweet smell. I lifted the vial to Eira's lips. Her breath caught. She looked at me, her gray eyes holding the memory of our pact now. She drank the draft in one quick, determined gulp. Just like that, everything changed. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. A violent, screaming shockwave of energy slammed into the psychic link. The bond didn't just amplify, it became a conduit for pure, untamed force. I staggered, falling back on the bed, holding onto Eira, who was convulsing beside me. The room spun. I felt her raw luminary power surging, combined with the catalyst, and the overwhelming emotion was a mixture of terrifying aggression and explosive, possessive desire. Mine, the word screamed in my mind, a duel between her defiant spirit and my own alpha wolf. Meanwhile, Eira was forcing the counter-absorption as the bond pulsed. She targeted the surge. Theron, watching from the fireplace, suddenly cried out. He clutched his head, his eyes rolling back in their sockets. He hadn't just witnessed the forced intimacy. Eira had redirected the uncontrolled psychic fallout straight into his mind. He was being flooded by the chaotic energy of the scar bond, the full, devastating truth of our dangerous, volatile unity. He collapsed, convulsing once, then lying still, appearing to be suffering an immediate, severe stroke. The two guards rushed toward him. Cynric froze. He looked at the collapsed elder, then back at me, his eyes wide with shocked realization, the realization that this was not normal, that Luna possessed a terrible, unknown power. I used the confusion without warning. I moved to complete the ritual, seizing control of the spiraling energy before it killed us both. I took her face in my hands, locking my eyes with hers, forcing the power to stabilize. "Your defiance is mine," I roared, the words echoing only in our. Chapter 16. I watched the guards carry Theron's slack body out of the chamber. The Grand Elder, the greatest threat to my rule, was now gone, defeated not by my strength, but by Eira's terrifying, invisible power. In the quiet that followed, I pushed myself up. My body was singing with pain and a profound, exhausting satisfaction. The bond, once a thin wire, was now a roaring river of shared consciousness. Cynric approached me, his face pale and etched with confusion. He was the only witness who wasn't currently unconscious or dead. "Alpha," Cynric said, his voice barely a whisper. "The Elder, what happened?" "He was simply watching." "He was weak, Cynric," I lied instantly, my voice low and authoritative. The immense power required to solidify a claim of this magnitude was too much for his aged mind to bear. It was an omen, a display of the Obsidian lineage's absolute strength. The rite was a success. Because of that simple lie, I elevated the catastrophe to a miracle. Cynric looked at Eira, who was now slowly sitting up, Pulling the furs around her, he saw the fire in her eyes, the dark scars, and the sheer force of survival radiating off her. He knew I was lying, but he chose loyalty. "I understand, Alpha," Cynric murmured. "I will inform the council that the Grand Elder suffered a stress-induced fit of ill health due to the strength of the new bond. One will also ensure no one enters this chamber without your direct authority. She is too dangerous." He didn't say Luna, he said she. He understood the raw power. Not only that, but Cynric's choice made him my co-conspirator. Next, Eira and I were finally alone. Her name hung in the air as I moved to her side, sinking onto the edge of the bed. "You hit him," I breathed, a mixture of horror and awe clawing at my throat. I deflected his curiosity. Eira corrected, her voice husky. "He was trying to sense the bond's success. I gave him what he wanted, the true, volatile chaos." He was weak because his mind couldn't handle the power of two true alphas fusing. Her world tilted slightly as she reached out, her fingers brushing the sweat-damp hair from my temple. The touch sent a smooth, possessive wave through the bond. It was acknowledgement, not love, but a shared affirmation of their terrible success. Even so, the external threat remained. I had bought time, but the remaining elders would smell the deception. "They will convene tonight," I stated. "They will declare the ritual a political failure and demand the trial of loyalty, a final, formal test of the Luna before the assembled pack. They will try to force you to betray your old pack's memory." With every heartbeat, the tension rose. If Eira failed this final test of political obedience, the elders would use the chaos of Theron's collapse to depose me. Claiming my lack of control over my mate was an abdication of alpha power. Rather than resting, I moved to the archive cabinet, needing to secure the locket and the scroll. As the bond pulsed, I felt her acceptance of the coming challenge. I knew the full cost of the bond now. The political war was now a joint effort, and my life depended on her ability to act. The strategic question was no longer if she would submit, but how she would publicly defy the elders while still securing my crown. Chapter 17. The morning after the ritual felt unreal. Come morning, the silence in the chamber was replaced by the constant, low thrum of the amplified bond. We didn't need to speak. I knew every ripple of her fear, every flash of her determination. I felt it, clear as day, a quiet, protective possessiveness emanating from her toward me, a reflection of the pact we had made. This was the dark intimacy, the true, terrifying consequence of the catalyst. We were sitting by the fire, drinking strong, bitter tea. As the echo faded of the guards moving outside, I decided to lay all the cards on the table. "The Luminari," I began, holding the scroll. "The texts confirm it. Your lineage contains a gene that allows you to absorb and channel energy. The reason Theron collapsed is because you redirected the binding force. You saved me, Eira, but you also made the bond permanent and uncontrollable." I paused, looking at the silver locket she now wore openly, slipped under her collar. Her voice trembled slightly when she spoke. "The locket stabilizes it." She confessed. "It was a passive ward, guarding the gene. Now that the bond has been forced, the locket acts as an anchor, but it is not a perfect defense." Then, I revealed the final piece of the puzzle. The open loop from the start. There is one thing that could stabilize the Luminari completely and neutralize the aggressive feedback loop of the bond: the heartwood bloom, a flower of perfect light and healing. It's what the first alphas used to heal wounded Luminari, not bind them. As the truth unraveled, Eira looked at me with dawning horror. "You flogged me, you bound me, and you forced me to use the power that can only be truly healed by a legend. You chose cruelty when the solution was mercy." The accusation was a clean, agonizing wound. I looked at her, seeing the pain I had caused, amplified by the bond. This was the emotional core. My necessary political cruelty had only created unnecessary suffering. I pulled her into my arms, this time not with violence or dominance, but with a shuddering need for acceptance. The space between them burned with a potent cocktail of regret and desire. I was trained to believe strength must be enforced. "I swear to you, Eira, once this trial is over and the crown is secure, I will find the heartwood bloom. I will heal the chaos I created, not for my crown, but for your peace." The deep emotional connection was forged not in shared pleasure, but in shared guilt and the promise of future penance. What followed was a moment of genuine, raw intimacy. Stripped of the political posturing of the previous night, her hands ran across my chest, the contact sending warm, affirming currents through the link. She felt it, clear as day. The vulnerability beneath the Alpha's armor. I need her. This intense, non-toxic connection established the counter-theme to the Elder's cruelty, but then, the call came. Sinric, reporting that the remaining Elders were preparing the trial of loyalty. The moment of peace was over. The final, deadly test was upon them. Chapter 18. The trial of loyalty was held in the central courtyard. Before the entire pack, it was a spectacle designed to ensure public compliance. By the time I stood with Eira before the remaining Elder Council, the setting sun cast long, judging shadows. The primary threat was now Elder Kale, an ancient, sour wolf who had always been Theron's rival for power. Kale approached Eira, his gaze cold and calculating. He focused on the last open loop, the defiance of her original pack. Luna Eira, Kale demanded, his voice thin but carrying. The final test requires you to renounce your former pack's claim and demonstrate your absolute loyalty to the Obsidian lineage. If your people were to rise up tomorrow, would you raise your hand against them? I had prepared Eira for this. The politically correct answer was a sharp, unhesitating yes. As the bond pulsed, I projected the answer. Say yes, say it now. Eira felt my command, but she ignored it. She looked at Kale, then swept her gaze across the entire silent pack, then finally turned to look at me. Elder Kale, I will not raise my hand against the Shadowpeak people, Eira stated, her voice clear and strong. A gasp rippled through the pack and Kale's face twisted into a victorious snarl. A failure. She rejects the claim. But then, Eira continued, her gray eyes burning with a new, powerful authority. I will not raise my hand against them, because they are already mine. When the Alpha claims a mate, he claims her people. My loyalty is to the Obsidian lineage, but my responsibility is to all wolves under my domain, including the Shadowpeak. I will not fight them. I will absorb them. I am the Luna of two peoples. I am their queen. The answer was utterly brilliant. It was political, not emotional. She upheld my crown while asserting her own power, demonstrating a new type of queen, one who ruled through unity, not cruelty. I felt a surge of overwhelming pride, not dominance, but genuine, deep respect. My core flaw, the belief that true strength is absolute dominance, crumbled completely. True strength was the power to unify. Kale was speechless. He was trapped. He couldn't challenge her claim of unification without sounding weak. And Alpha Darian, Kale sputtered, turning to me, his final attack. Do you permit this unprecedented claim? Do you sanction a Luna who refuses to forsake her past? I looked at Eira, and with a single glance, I made my choice, the final turn of my character arc. I not only permit it, Elder, I command it, I declared, my voice booming, silencing the entire courtyard. Eira is not a prisoner. She is the Luminary Queen. Her power is my strength. She is the future of the Obsidian lineage. And, just like that, everything changed. I publicly acknowledged the forbidden power, defying the Elder's central tenet. I chose her over their tradition. Kale's face crumpled. He realized I had exposed their lies and seized absolute control. He and the remaining Elders knew the truth. The bond was real, terrifyingly potent, and now protected by the Alpha King. As her wolf stirred in response to my declaration, a wave of profound, protective love flooded the bond. Eira's true, genuine feeling breaking through her self-imposed guard. The final confrontation was set. The Elders, defeated politically and terrified psychically, would resort to violence. Chapter 19. I stood with Eira in my private chamber, overlooking the courtyard where I had just defied Elder Kale. After that declaration, we both knew we had passed the point of no return. The political games were done. The violence was coming. As if summoned, the first alarm sounded, a desperate, blaring horn usually reserved for large-scale external invasions. They're not waiting for morning, I growled, drawing the heavy blade I kept hidden beneath the fireplace mantel. Without warning, the door to the outer hall exploded inward, splintering into heavy shards of oak. Elder Kale, his face contorted in a mask of pure, desperate fury, led a small, elite cohort of his most loyal, savage guards, wolves who favored the old, brutal ways. Kale's voice was a ragged scream. Kill the witch. Kill the traitor Alpha. We reclaim the lineage. The fight exploded into the room. Her body moved on instinct as Eira spun away from me, grabbing a heavy silver candelabra off a side table. She didn't have wolf strength, but she had the quick, strategic brilliance of a warrior. I engaged Kale immediately. He was old, but driven by fanatical hatred, he fought with surprising speed, aiming not for my limbs, but for the soft spots, the throat, the heart. Meanwhile, Eira was fighting the guards, using the heavy furniture as shields and weapons. As the bond pulsed, I felt her terror, yes, but also a fierce, guiding strength. She was feeding me tactical advice. Behind you, Darian. I left. I felt it clear as day. The bond was not just emotional. It was a perfect, tactical neural link. Not only that, but every near-miss Kale inflicted sent a dull ache through the bond, draining my strength. He knew her pain was my weakness. He was exploiting the connection. She drains you, Darian. Kale spat, kicking me back against the stone fireplace. The Luminari is a parasite. It will kill you and your weak, half-breed heir. His words sliced deep. Because of that, I fought harder, fueled by a terrifying wave of protective rage. What's worse, I saw one of the guards corner Eira. He swung his iron mace, aiming for her head. I couldn't reach her in time. In the span of a breath, Eira reacted. She didn't block the mace. Instead, she unleashed pure, chaotic psychic energy through the bond, screaming the single word, mine. The guard stumbled, clutching his head, his eyes glazing over as Eira's concentrated power hit him. He collapsed, paralyzed, but the mace grazed Eira's shoulder, a shallow, but bleeding cut. The pain that slammed into me was blinding. I fell to my knees, roaring, the world blurring. Red Kale saw his opening. He lunged, a blur of desperate silver. Chapter 20. Kale's blade was coming down fast, aimed at my exposed neck. I couldn't move. The pain from Eira's cut had momentarily crippled my alpha strength. The climax was deafening, but it wasn't the sound of steel. Her soul answered the silent, desperate plea in my mind. Eira screamed my name, Darian. Her body moved on instinct, forcing the full, unrestrained Luminari power through the bond. The dark scars on her back seemed to momentarily glow with an internal, fierce light. A massive, brilliant silver wave of pure psychic force exploded from her, channeled through the bond, passing through me and slamming into Kale. The shockwave didn't just knock Kale back, it burned him. He flew across the room, hitting the wall with a sickening crunch. His ancient fur, even his skin, was smoking. Where the silver energy touched him, he was neutralized, defeated by the combined, terrifying display of a unified, chaotic power. The remaining guards, terrified by the display, dropped their weapons and fled the room, scrambling down the shattered hallway. I staggered to my feet, breathing raggedly. I looked at Eira. She was swaying, exhausted, but utterly triumphant, as if the world narrowed to just the two of us. I saw the power burning in her gray eyes. We did it, she whispered, swaying. Her breath caught. No, I corrected, moving to her side, supporting her, my hand instantly going to the cut on her shoulder. We did it. You are the fire, Eira. I am just the steel that contains it. The bond settled into a steady, intense thrum, the power immense, but stable. The true truth had been revealed. My alpha strength was the perfect anchor for her volatile Luminari legacy. Truth be told, the shame of the whip was replaced by the terrifying, profound pride in her power. I wasn't just an alpha king, I was the king to the Luminari queen. I looked down at the courtyard, now filled with the terrified, silent pack members who had witnessed the explosion of light and power. They didn't see a defeated alpha. They saw a leader who commanded a force beyond their comprehension. The reign of the Luminari king had begun, cemented by blood and terrifying, shared magic. Chapter 21. After that night, the Citadel was silent. The elders were gone, Theron incapacitated, Kale neutralized, the others fleeing. I had absolutely secured the crown. I found Eira the next morning, standing by the large window, watching the sunrise paint the valley gold. She looked fragile, but whole. I approached her, pulling her back against my chest, wrapping my arms around her. The scars on her back felt like familiar territory against my skin. The council is dissolved, I murmured into her hair. Sinric is interim elder. The Shadowpeak territory will be merged under your direct command. No more trials, no more lies. Then she turned in my arms, a soft, beautiful smile gracing her lips, a smile I had never seen before, free of politics and pain. "One more lie, Darian," she whispered, placing my hand on her abdomen as the bond pulsed with overwhelming joy. The truth hit me, a wave of love, hope, and terrifying, fierce protectiveness. "The catalyst worked. We are bound, Alpha, and we are going to have a child." I was speechless. A child, a direct result of the violence and the love, bound by a chaotic, powerful lineage. What followed was the only honest, unconditional declaration of love I had ever known. My voice trembled with emotion. "I love your fire, Eira. I love your defiance. I love the chaos that saved us both. You saved my life, my crown, and my soul." "And you healed mine," she replied, resting her head against my chest. Before she could move, I made the final promise, closing the initial open loop. "I will find the heartwood bloom, Luna, not to neutralize your power, but to protect you and your child from the pain of this bond. We will rule together, and we will heal the damage of the old ways." The final truth of our story was simple. The Alpha King, who thought he needed absolute control, found his true strength in the chaotic, untamed love of his luminary queen. The reign had begun, and the search for the heartwood bloom was the next great advent. Chapter 22. The Great Hall, usually reserved for formal council, was packed with pack leaders, betas, and Shadowpeak delegates. Come morning, 2 days after the assault, the Citadel felt cleaner, lighter, purged of the Elder's dark influence. I stood on the dais with Eira at my side. She was wearing the formal Luna mantle, black velvet trimmed with obsidian, but the silver locket was visible against the cloth. She felt it, clear as day, the shift in the pack's perception. Fear mixing with immense respect. "The old council is dissolved," I announced, my voice resonating with unchallenged authority. After that simple statement, I paused, allowing the weight of the change to settle. The attacks on this citadel were instigated by those who feared change and coveted power. They are gone. We enter a new era. I looked at Eira, placing my hand firmly on her shoulder. I did this because I needed to cement the visual of their unity and her new status. "Eira of Shadowpeak is now your queen, the Luminary Queen," I declared. "She is the embodiment of unity, compassion, and strength. The Shadowpeak territory will be governed under her direct guidance. We are one pack. Any wolf who opposes this new reign, who spreads fear of the Luminary, or seeks to return to the brutality of the old ways, will be considered a traitor to the Obsidian lineage." Cynric stepped forward, his expression serious, loyal, and utterly supportive. "I have accepted the role of chief beta and advisor to the new council. Alpha, we have identified pockets of elder sympathizers near the western quarry. They are isolated, clinging to the idea that the Luminary power is unsafe." Despite that small pocket of resistance, the main pack was silent, accepting they had witnessed the raw power, and they chose the strong, united front. Next, Eira spoke, her voice calm and strong. "We will rule with respect for the law and respect for the spirit. We will build, not break. The time for fear is over." The moment their eyes locked with the pack, the new reign was sealed. The sheer force of their combined presence, amplified by the bond, was undeniable. The remaining resistance was manageable. My primary focus was now shifting entirely away from politics and toward the quest for the heartwood bloom, which was the only way to ensure the future. Chapter 23. We retreated to the chamber, where Eira was studying the luminary texts with fierce concentration. Meanwhile, I oversaw the preparations for a small, swift quest. I watched her, the sight of her growing belly a constant, breathtaking reminder of the stakes. She felt it, clear as day. My worry. "It's more than a cure," Darian, Eira said, looking up from the scroll. She didn't know what scared her more, the journey or the power she carried. "The luminary prophecy says the heartwood bloom is not just a counteragent, it's a key. It doesn't stabilize the power. It perfects it. It will either make our child the most powerful force in our history, or it will overwhelm them." As the truth unraveled, I realized the complexity of the task had just multiplied. This wasn't just medicine, it was destiny. "We need it, Eira," I stated, my voice firm. "I will not risk the future of our child or the stability of our bond. One need to leave immediately. The geothermal vents are in the southern ranges, far into the neutral zones. It's a dangerous journey. And you are pregnant. I cannot risk you." Because of that, I had to make a tough choice. I needed an absolute minimum of wolves. Sinric will accompany me. His loyalty is absolute, and he understands the danger of the bond. Now we take only 2 other trackers. We move fast. We move silent. We will be gone no longer than the next moon cycle. Eira rose, walking to me, her world tilted as she faced the reality of our separation. With every heartbeat, I felt the sharp anxiety of the distance that would soon separate the bond. The danger is not just the journey, she warned, placing her hand on my jaw. The neutral zones are claimed by rogue packs and creatures who will sense the alpha scent, and the bond will be strained over distance. It will feel like a constant low-grade ache. How will you command without my strength anchored to your mind? That's why I knew I had to trust my training and the residual strength of the recent fusion. The transition was complete. The king was leaving his throne and his pregnant queen to become a seeker, driven by love and necessity. The journey was set. But the emotional cost of separation was the new immediate tension. Chapter 24. The air in the chamber felt cold, heavy with the inevitability of goodbye. In the stillness that followed, we stood facing each other, dressed for separation. The silver locket, Eira said, gently unclasping the chain from her neck. It anchors the luminary. When the power is strained, take it. It will act as a focus. If you are in danger, I will feel it clearly, even across the distance. I took the locket. It was warm from her body, a tiny, powerful piece of their destiny. As the bond pulsed, I felt a fierce wave of devotion. I pulled her close for a final kiss. It was tender, deep, and laced with the desperate ache of separation. The intense, dark connection was now softened by love, but amplified by urgency. I love you, come back to me. The words echoed through the psychic link, clear and undeniable. I swear by the scar on your back, I will return, I vowed. Without thinking, I turned and left the chamber, pulling the door shut on the most precious thing in my life. I met Sinric and the 2 silent trackers in the outer courtyard. Just like that, everything changed. The Alpha King was now a warrior on a desperate quest. Moments later, as we rode out of the Citadel walls and into the shadowed forest, I glanced back at the high tower. Eira was a small silhouette in the window. The bond stretched, pulling at my chest, a constant, painful reminder of her presence. But as we crossed the border and the trees closed in, a different sensation hit the edge of my awareness. A cold, old scent, not a wolf, but something ancient and predatory, a silent watcher in the high branches. She felt it, clear as day, a sudden spike of cold danger on the other end of the bond. I stopped, hand on my blade. I looked back, but the branches were empty. The elders are defeated, but the luminary prophecy is known. Chapter 25. 2 days into the neutral zones, the landscape had become a desolate tapestry of jagged gray rock and stunted, skeletal pines. The air, usually crisp, was thick with the smell of sulfur and damp decay from the geothermal activity that marked our destination. By the time the sun dipped behind the western ridges, casting long, menacing shadows, the tracking was clear. We weren't alone. Alpha, Sinric murmured, dropping into a protective crouch, his eyes scanning the ridgeline. We have been followed since the border. It doesn't smell like a wolf. I felt it, clear as day, a scent that was ancient, mineral-rich, and cold, like stone that had recently moved. It was the same presence I had felt watching us leave the Citadel. It's not Theron's people, I confirmed, gripping the silver locket beneath my tunic. This is older. It wants the bloom. The strain on the bond was immense. Eira was leagues away, and the psychic link, once a comforting hum, was now a constant, low throb of anxiety and separation pain. I pressed the locket, trying to focus on her presence, but the connection was thin, distorted by the vast distance and the strange magnetic fields of the neutral territory. What followed was a tactical decision rooted in my new reality. I couldn't afford a full-scale confrontation. My alpha strength was anchored to Eira. Fighting at this distance would drain us both and risk stressing the pregnancy. No confrontation, I commanded, keeping my voice low. I did this because every ounce of energy needed to be conserved for the quest. We shake them. We head for the serpent's coil. Past the terrain there is too unpredictable for a large creature to track quickly. Instead of following the winding trail, we plunged into a treacherous maze of boulders and deep, shadowed crevasses. The short sentences reflected the hurried, desperate pace. Jump, slide, hide, repeat. Despite that desperate attempt to lose our shadow, The trackers reported no change as if summoned. A small avalanche of loose stones tumbled from the high peak above, nearly crushing my rear scout. It wasn't natural. Alpha, Cynric gasped, dusting off the shaken tracker. It's keeping pace, and it's deliberate. The space between them burned with renewed tension. We were dealing with a creature capable of using the environment as a weapon. That's why I realized this quest wasn't just about collecting a flower. It was about surviving a hidden war for ancient power. The strategic question was not if we would fight, but when the distance would break the bond entirely. Chapter 26. We stopped beneath the cover of a massive, geothermally heated cave, the first genuine rest since leaving the Citadel. The cave offered warmth, but no peace. The pain in my chest was constant, a deep, hollow ache that wasn't physical, but psychic. The bond, stretched beyond its limits, was causing agonizing interference. I felt Eira's emotions, her worry, her quiet terror, but they came through distorted, like a broken signal. Eira was trying to communicate. I gripped the silver locket through the static. A fragmented image flickered in my mind. Prophecy, danger, north path. The intensity of the connection sent a searing pain behind my eyes. I cried out, dropping the locket, staggering back against the cold cave wall. Cynric rushed to my side. Alpha. What is it? The bond, I gasped, clutching my head. It's tearing. She's trying to send information, but the distance is shredding it. This created the highest conflict yet. The very thing that made me invincible, the shared power, was now the greatest vulnerability. I was tactically handicapped. What followed was a desperate attempt to stabilize the connection. I focused on the locket, visualizing Eira's face, pouring my protective will down the psychic channel. I'm fine, stay calm, protect the child. Her soul answered with a rush of soothing warmth, but it was weak, like water struggling uphill. The message was clear. I am stabilizing it, Darian, but you must conserve your energy. Do not use the full alpha shift. I felt it, clear as day, the understanding of the new rules of engagement. I was temporarily operating at a fraction of my strength, dependent on Eira's distant emotional control. I knew the full cost of the bond now. Separation was a physical disability. I stood up, shaking off the residual pain. Even so, I had to push forward. The fragmented message, North Path, was now my only lead. I trusted her intuition, fed by her luminary knowledge. This pivotal moment deepened the toxic intimacy of their dependence. My physical readiness was directly tied to her emotional stability, leagues away. The strategic question was now, was the unknown tracker following us, or was it a guard of the North Path Eira had warned me about? Chapter 27. We moved toward the North Path, a steep, narrow trail leading deeper into the volatile zone. By the time the sun rose, we were walking on steam-heated ground, the air acrid with sulfur. Without warning, we hit the trap. A cascade of razor-sharp volcanic glass was released from above, triggered by a pressure plate I should have seen. Scatter! I roared, shifting instantly into a half-wolf crouch, drawing on just enough alpha speed to shield Cynric. We narrowly avoided the lethal glass, but before we could recover, a figure dropped from the mist above, silent, ancient, and utterly foreign. It was neither wolf nor human. It was tall, lean, and covered in overlapping, dark green scales that seemed to absorb the light. Its eyes were huge, black orbs, and its limbs were unnaturally long. With his scent in the air, the sulfur smell was suddenly overlaid with a powerful, earthy musk, like wet stone and deep earth. This was the tracker. The alpha of the Obsidian lineage strays far from his broken walls. The creature hissed. Its voice was a dry, rasping sound, like sandpaper against rock. You carry the scent of the scars, and the mother's blessing. You seek the bloom. I stepped forward, blade ready. The bloom is not for you. You are on claimed territory. The creature laughed, a high, grating sound. As the air thickened, I felt a strange, magnetic pull, trying to anchor my feet to the sulphurous ground. Territory is irrelevant to Draken. I am the first watcher of the vents. I guard the secrets of the Luminari. The power you brutalized, that flower is not yours to take. Little wolf, it belongs to the rightful heir, the one with the blood of earth. Draken, a pre-wolf shifter, a creature of pure earth magic, tied to the geothermal vents. The conflict was immediate. The Draken struck with unnerving speed, its scaled hand lashing out. I deflected the attack, but the strength was immense. I fought defensively, desperately avoiding using my full alpha shift, terrified of the bond's painful feedback, but I was losing ground. Just then, I felt Eira's presence, a sudden, sharp spike of fierce, protective rage cutting through the distance. She couldn't send power, but she sent emotion. I seized on the wave of emotional fuel, pushing back against the Draken, buying time for Cynric to flink. The tension broke the Draken, seeing the two of us coordinate, paused. The bond is strong, but weak over distance, the Draken observed, its black eyes fixing on the silver locket beneath my tunic. You are the vessel, not the source. I will let you lead me to the bloom, but know this, Wolf. I seek the flower for the heir's safety. Not yours if you prove a poor guardian. I will take the bloom and the queen back to the protection of the earth. This established the new, immediate tension for the following scene. The Draken was revealed to be a powerful, territorial guardian, an antagonist who shared my goal, Eira and the child's safety, but distrusted my methods. The quest for the Heartwood Bloom had just become a race with a terrifying, ancient, and morally ambiguous escort. Chapter 28. The Draken, Kaelin, moved with unnatural grace. His earthy musk, a constant, judgmental presence, made the tension palpable. By the time we reached a towering basalt cliff face, Kaelin stopped, his obsidian eyes fixed on me. The path requires ascent. Little wolf, climb without the burst of your savage alpha speed. Rely on your wit, not your brutal gift. This was a deliberate test. I ordered Cynric to stay below instead of shifting. I began the climb, using only human strength. The rock was slick, the footholds crumbling. The bond protested, an immediate wave of exhaustion. You are weak. Darian. Kaelin's thoughts were amplified, sliding into my mind like sharp glass. I pushed on, finding the subtle structural flaws. I focused only on the mission, on Eira and the child. I reached the summit, battered, breathing hard. You passed, Kaelin admitted, a grudging rasp. You climb with a human mind, sustained by a wolf's obsession. Tolerable, but the bond bleeds you. Wolf, you are fragile, and fragility will doom the heir. Chapter 29. The path led through a narrow canyon. The bond's strain was agonizing. I sat against a warm rock face, the silver locket clutched so tightly my knuckles were white. The psychic feedback was causing a physical manifestation, a pounding, splitting headache. I barely registered the small, scented rock shard Kaelin had dropped nearby. A test. My head was exploding. I felt the powerful urge to shift fully, to unleash the alpha roar and shake off the pain, but the memory of Eira's warning stopped me. Do not stress the bond. I collapsed. I was failing. In a desperate, final attempt, I focused all my remaining will into the locket. I didn't send words or commands. I sent pure, raw, unadulterated needs. Eira, I am breaking. The intensity of the connection was instantaneous and devastating. I cried out, but the pain instantly mixed with healing. Her soul answered with a surge of silver energy. Pushing through the distance, she projected a focused image, the comforting, perfect image of our unborn child surrounded by light. The power of that image was enough. The pain receded. The bond snapped back into a strong, stable connection. Kaelin stepped closer. His black eyes narrowed. The queen intervenes. She is saved, because she chooses to protect you. You are a vessel of her destiny. I stood up, shaking off the collapse. I was incapable of succeeding without her love as my shield. Chapter 30. We reached the Serpent's Coil, steaming, narrow, and final. The Heartwood Bloom grows at the central node, Kaelin informed me, but there is a final test. It is guarded by a curse that demands purity of intent. I gripped the locket. The weight of the prophecy crushed me. It does not yield to alpha strength, Kaelin continued. It yields only to absolute, unconditional love, and the promise of self-sacrifice. You must approach Darian alone. Darian, you must approach, seeking the bloom not for your crown but for her survival, above your own life. And if I fail? I asked. I take the bloom and the queen, he repeated, without inflection. I handed Cynric my blade, my heavy coat. Every sign of rank was shed. I kept only the silver locket, the symbol of our bond. I go alone for her, I stated, stepping toward the steaming canyon mouth. The final act required me to shed every piece of the Alpha King I used to be. Chapter 31. I stepped into the Serpent's Coil. The heat was oppressive. I entered the central chamber. The Heartwood Bloom glowed on a quartz spire, single, luminous, and breathtaking. Then, the curse began. An illusion materialized, a shimmering, seductive figure wearing the face of Elder Kale, but speaking with the voice of my deepest ambition. Take it, Darian, the bond will stabilize, yes, but it will stabilize your dominance. You will be the God King, never challenged. The psychic temptation was devastating. I pulled back, I focused on the locket, I remembered the scar, the chaos, the fierce, equal partnership. I do not seek a silent queen, I stated, my voice ringing with resolve. I seek my partner. My strength is not dominance, it is her defiance. The illusion ride, the heat intensified. You do not seek absolute power, but do you value her life above your own? Prove it. Chapter 32. The light became blinding. Magma erupted around the spire. I closed my eyes, accepting the end. I focused on the locket, on Eira. I poured every ounce of consciousness into the bond, a message of pure, unconditional sacrifice. My life for yours, my death for your safety, my love is the only claim. I searing heat, a profound, final acceptance. The silver locket in my hand pulsed with Eira's energy. The moment of my willing sacrifice completed the requirement. A blinding, silver-white light erupted from the locket, and the bloom, fusing the energy, was restorative warmth. The tension broke, the magma retreated, the curse was broken. The bloom, bathed in silver light, floated gently toward me. I caught it, a single, warm, luminous flower. The bond, once volatile chaos, settled into a perfect, tender hum, stable and profound. Chapter 33. I returned to the past. Kalen bowed his great, scaled head. You are the partner. Go protect the heartwood, protect the air. The journey back was fast, fueled by the stable, soothing current of the bond. I burst into the citadel. I found Eira in our chamber. I have it, I whispered, tears burning in my eyes. It's over. Eira, we are safe. She took the luminous flower. It dissolved into a silver mist that flowed into her skin, then transferred to me through the bond, a healing, stabilizing force. I pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness I hadn't known I possessed. We are free, Darian, she murmured, resting her hands on her growing belly, free to be who we choose to be. The bond was perfect. The scarred mating bond, born of brutality, was healed and perfected. Their love, born from the deepest, darkest crucible, became the foundation of the new Obsidian lineage, a powerful future guided by the Luminary Queen and her unconditional king. The end. Thank you for reading. Folded hands. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. We've got lots more great content coming your way. See you in the next one.